Black Tape Archives presents One Bad Day. The following recording was recovered from a damaged cell phone discovered inside an abandoned vehicle on the outskirts of Albuquerque, New Mexico. The recording contains two distinct voices. The first was identified as belonging to a 30-year-old security officer named Andrew. The second voice has never been identified. Andrew stood beside pump number 4, staring at the gas station screen. $19.87 was approved. The nozzle clicked, but the tank wasn't quite full. It wasn't even close. But it should get him through the week. Probably. Maybe. Hopefully. Those 3 words had become the foundation of his entire life. He climbed into the driver's seat and opened his wallet. One $10 bill remained, the last physical money he possessed. Everything else existed on credit. Credit cards, overdraft fees, and false promises. Inside the gas station, he bought a blue Gatorade and the cheapest bottle of vodka available. The cashier barely even looked at him, just asked for ID. Andrew preferred it this way. People only really saw you when you were succeeding. When you're struggling, you became part of the scenery. Back inside the car, he twisted the cap off the Gatorade, took a long drink, then poured enough out to make room for the vodka. The mixture wasn't about getting drunk, not entirely. Part of it was survival. The Gatorade would help tomorrow. The vodka would help tonight. At least that was the lie he kept telling himself. His phone buzzed. A text message. Andrew looked down. His thumb hovered over the screen. A photograph appeared. It was of his son, wearing a graduation gown, smiling, proud, growing up. Andrew stared at the picture longer than he should have. Earlier that afternoon, his son had called. Andrew had been working, again. And by the time he got off work, returning the call felt complicated. Too much history, too much distance, too many adults who couldn't stand each other. So he hadn't called back. Now the guilt sat beside the hunger in his stomach. He took another drink. Today had already been bad before the alcohol. His supervisor had written him up again. Forgetting your uniform. Again. Andrew really wanted to explain. The night shift at one job ended after midnight. The morning shift at another started before sunrise. Laundry had become a luxury. Sleep was a rumor. But instead of arguing, he signed the write-up. Nobody cares about explanations when they're holding the paperwork. His main job had given him 35 hours a week. Sometimes. When work existed. The checks arrived whenever they felt like arriving. The second job paid consistently, but every shift felt like someone was slowly dismantling his body with a wrench. DoorDash filled the gaps, sometimes, but it was never enough. Andrew checked his banking app. Negative $34. Again. The funny thing was, he genuinely couldn't tell anymore whether his problems were his fault. Sometimes they were. Sometimes they weren't. Sometimes he'd forget things. Missed deadlines, made poor decisions, spent money he shouldn't have. Other times, life simply swung first. The problem was he could never tell where his mistakes ended and everyone else's began. That uncertainty was exhausting. The sun disappeared behind the mountains. Andrew pulled into an abandoned parking lot behind a closed shopping center. The asphalt stretched endlessly beneath flickering streetlights. No people, no traffic, no witnesses. He lifted the bottle. This time, he didn't even bother mixing it. The alcohol burned going down. His eyes watered. The warmth spread through his chest. For a few moments, the noise inside his head grew quieter. Not gone, just quieter. He took another drink, then another, and then another, until the bottle sitting in the cup holder looked less like a bottle and more like a solution. That was when he heard the voice. "You know what's strange?" Andrew froze. The parking lot was empty, but the voice continued. "You see, most monsters start out trying to be heroes." His grip tightened around the bottle. He scanned the darkness. Nothing. No movement, no headlights, no people, only cracked pavement and dying streetlights. "Who's there?" The voice ignored the question. "You're drunk. Again." Andrew laughed. "Yeah." His smile faded. "You weren't always, were you?" The voice sounded familiar. Not like a friend, not like a stranger, like hearing an old recording of yourself. Close enough to recognize. Different enough to be unsettling. "You don't know anything about me." The voice remained calm. "You missed your son's call. Yet again." Andrew froze. "You forgot your uniform. Again." Silence. "The paycheck still hasn't arrived, and it is Monday." Silence. "Your rent is due." Silence. "The credit card is nearly maxed out, if not already." Andrew sat forward. Every muscle tightened. "Who are you?" There was no answer. Only wind. And then, "You know what's strange about people?" Andrew didn't respond. "You see, they think they can break all at once." The voice sounded almost amused. "But you know, nobody breaks all at once, Andrew." The parking lot felt colder now. "You see, people break in pieces. A little today, a little next month, and a little next year." The bottle suddenly felt heavier. "And you know, eventually they mistake the broken pieces for who they are." Andrew stared at his reflection in the glass. It was distorted, tired. He was over 30 now. "All you think about is money," the voice sighed. "It isn't just about the money. You think this is about alcohol. It isn't. It's about..." For the first time, the voice answered immediately. "It's about you being tired. The words landed harder than they should have. Not angry, not desperate, not broke. Tired. The kind of tired sleep doesn't fix. The kind that settles into your bones. The kind that makes existing feel heavy. For years, Andrew had carried everything. Bills, work, failure, expectations, regrets. Everybody told him to be stronger. Nobody ever asked him how much weight he was carrying. The bottle rose again, but the voice didn't stop. That was the unsettling part. It wasn't even trying to save him. It wasn't preaching. It wasn't judging. It was simply observing. Andrew took another drink, then another, then another. Finally, he asked the question, the real question, the one hiding behind all the others. But what if they're right? The voice remained silent at this one. What if I'm really the problem? Wind moved through the empty parking lot. What if my ex was right? His throat tightened. What if everybody was right? The answer came quietly. Maybe some of them are right, Andrew. Andrew blinked. Maybe some of it is actually your fault, Andrew. The words hit like a punch. You procrastinate. You drink. You make mistakes. Andrew stared into the darkness because every word was true. The voice continued. But here's what you're missing, Andrew. Life can be unfair. You can make mistakes. The streetlight flickered. Both things can be true at the same time. Andrew lowered the bottle. Slowly. But that's not fair. No, Andrew, it's not, the voice agreed. Life isn't fair. Silence. Then the voice spoke one final time. You know what separates a hero from a monster? Andrew closed his eyes. The question felt ancient. He waited for the answer. One decides their pain belongs to everyone else. The other decides it stops with them. Andrew stared at the bottle. His reflection stared back. It was tired, broken, afraid, human. For a moment, he imagined finishing it, going home, sleeping, waking up, doing this all over again tomorrow. The same cycle, the same excuses, the same pain, the same bottle. Then something shifted. Not hope. Hope was too strong of a word. Maybe stubbornness, maybe defiance, maybe survival. Andrew opened the car door. Cold air rushed inside. The bottle remained in his hand. Minutes passed. Then he finally poured it onto the pavement. The smell filled the parking lot. The liquid disappeared into the cracks. The voice didn't speak again. Nothing magical happened. No money appeared, no miracle arrived, no phone call changed his life. His account remained negative, his rent remained due, his problems remained waiting, tomorrow remained undefeated. But sitting there in the darkness, Andrew realized something. It had never been one bad day. It had been years. Years of small defeats, years of carrying weight, years of trying to become the man everyone needed him to be. And somehow, he was still here. The recording ends 17 minutes later. No second voice can be heard after that point. Andrew never reported hearing anything unusual. In fact, when questioned months later, he insisted he had been completely alone that night. Audio experts remain divided. Some insist the second speaker is clearly present. Others claim the recording contains only Andrew's voice layered over itself. Me, personally, after listening to the tape more times than I care to admit, I find myself disturbed by a different possibility. Because the voice never revealed anything supernatural. It never predicted the future. It never solved a problem. It never performed a miracle. Everything it said was something Andrew already knew, which leaves us with a troubling question. If the voice wasn't a ghost and it wasn't a stranger, then who was it?